Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Sanjay Patel, but before I do that, let me tell you who I am. I'm Melissa Schumann. I'm a course director in the sports marketing and media and internet marketing programs. I teach entrepreneurship. And let me tell you a little bit about Sanjay, okay? Sanjay Patel is the president and CEO of Datanautix. Datanautix is a Central Florida-based company that has developed artificial intelligence to assess customer reviews. They specialize in building software to help companies make sense of customer feedback. They have helped companies across the world and locally, including Orlando International Airport, Orlando Magic, Red Lobster, UCF, Orlando Tourism, Ticketmaster, and NBC Universal, to name a few. Datanautix analyzes an organization's reputation on social media and discovers trends and bigger problems which need attention. Sanjay Patel is the president and CEO of Datanautix. Sanjay earned his MBA from Yale and has a master's in artificial intelligence from Ohio State University. In addition to Sanjay's over 30 years experience in computer science, he serves as an advisory board member for the UCF Data Analytics Master's Program. And Datanautix has been mentioned in publications such as The Economist, Wall Street Reporter, and the Financial Times. So let's give a warm welcome to Sanjay Patel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. So we're really excited to have you here today, Sanjay. Thank you so much for your time. And we're really interested in what your unique company does. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Datanautix?
Sure. So I'll talk about the company first, because that's what I'm most excited about.
Okay.
We do magic, right? And magic in the sense, if you take large, magic to me is kind of interesting, right? It's typically science in the guise of wowing people. And so anything that's magic is really science in the background. The magic we do is imagine if you had 1 million open-ended comments and I asked one of you to come and work for me and read them and tell me what's going on in there. Chances are you'll probably update your resume and you'll find another job. The magic we do is we've built an AI engine that does exactly that, right? So if you think back to high school, 11th, 12th grade, and you were taking a language arts class, and you could diagram sentences out, and you could read 3 different paragraphs and find the relationships between them, and you could bubble up themes. That's kind of what our magic does. So and Datanautix is roughly 14 years old now. So we're a relatively old company in the traditional sense of the word. And in the entrepreneurship world, we're what's called a 10-year overnight success. Right? It's been a very slow, meandering road to get to where we are, but then where we are right now is a really, really cool place. My background, I've been an entrepreneur since 2000. Worked in the corporate world, got tired of it, and decided I was going to do something on my own. So this is my second startup. My first one was a venture capital-backed startup that we sold and did well with, but it was done in a very different environment. The second startup is completely bootstrapped. We have no venture capital funding. We're in a hot technology space, working hard trying to figure out how we can do an enterprise that typically takes millions of dollars of funding and do it on a shoestring budget on our own. So.
Great. Who is Anna?
So I'll tell you a story to describe who Anna is. So, what we do, like I said, is kind of artificial intelligence in a box. You put in open-ended content on one side, magic happens on the other side. You get this really nicely organized, sorted, analyzed output. And we used to call this thing a black box. Our first client for our black box was the Orlando Airport. We shared it with them. They want to get a sense of passenger experiences and traveler experiences, all that kind of stuff, right? So we go through the song and pony dance, and we take their data, and we show them the magic, and they love it. Then the guy taps me on the shoulder, and he says, listen, I'm willing to try this and pay for it. But you can't call it a black box because we're in the aviation industry. And every time we talk about black boxes, it's never a good thing. So we kind of scratched our heads and said, okay, so what do we call this thing, right? And traditional naming conventions came in, and then we decided you've got Siri out there, you've got Cortana, you've got all of these things that have been personified as a front end to AI. And so we decided we wanted to call her Anna, which is short for analyst. And we picked her for a few reasons. One is we believe she's really, really smart. She works 24/7, and she never complains. Right? I mean, to me, that's my wife, that's my mom. Women are just much harder working than guys are in my experiences. And we're like, you know what? Anna. So Anna's stuck, and it's really interesting. It was accidental. It wasn't by design. But when we go into meetings, when we present to clients, within the first 5 minutes, they're referring to Anna with, well, can she do that? And what else can Anna do? How does she learn, right? So clients personify her. And for us, it's really cool because we're not what I would call a technology company by design. We want to be a company that solves problems. And if you can get somebody to personify your platform and talk about it like it's a human, we've got a huge advantage when it comes to competitive situations. So that's the story behind Anna.
Okay. And just to put it in layman's terms, can you tell a little bit about how Anna works as far as collecting information from social media and different outlets?
Sure. So how many of you, when you eat out, you'll go leave a Facebook review, or you want to buy something, you look at an Amazon review, right? We're now in a world where only two things matter. It used to be that advertising was critical, right? You'd put ads out, people would see your product name, they'd get affiliated with it, they'd remember it when they went shopping, they'd buy that stuff. Now, only two things matter. The first thing that matters is people like me, right? I trust you more than I trust an ad. When I go to Amazon, I'm reading reviews because they're people like me. They're people that have paid money, bought a product, and decided to tell me their experience with the product. Right? So that's the first thing. So we've moved away from kind of relying on companies telling us what's great about their product. They're never going to tell you my product sucks. It's got these weaknesses. To relying on humans, because it's possible to. Right? So that the whole world is moving to a point where we've given control back, or consumers have taken control back. Right? They're the ones deciding what they're going to buy and how they're going to choose what they buy. And we're choosing based on what other people have had as experiences. Now, in that world, the volume of data expands significantly, right? I mean, you go to an Amazon, the way I buy, it's got to have at least a 4-star rating, and it's got to have several hundred reviews. And the first thing I'll do is I'll read the negative reviews. And then I'll decide, is that a wacky negative review or is it real? And if it's real and it is going to be an issue for me, I won't buy the product, that's it. Right? So in that world, how do you take thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of comments, and how do you make sense out of them? Right? So that's the first kind of thing that has been driving how we behave as consumers. The second thing is we're getting to a point where it's what I call shouting from the rooftops, right? When I was a kid and something went wrong, you could get up on your rooftop and shout, and your neighbors would hear you. And maybe a few people would be influenced by what you do. Today, when you shout from a rooftop, I mean, the entire world hears it, which means you've got to have the ability as an organization to listen to people shouting and yelling and complaining so that you can fix it before it becomes so embedded that whatever product you're selling, whatever service you're selling, is associated with bad reviews. Because once that happens, you're done, right? I mean, we know it from Amazon. Amazon never has very low-rated products for very long because those products just don't survive. So it's those two things that are happening that I think are driving what we do. So we have an ability to scrape, extract, find online data. And if we get a chance and it makes sense, I'll talk to you about the Orlando Magic, for instance, and fan reviews. But we will kind of go online and collect reviews. And for the Orlando airport, for instance, we scrape all of their social media data. Right? And on a weekly basis, we'll visually show them what's going on. What are people talking about? And we even do it with emojis. How many of you send messages on a regular basis that's got some sort of an emoji in it? It's fairly common, right? It's almost like going back to the cave ages, where we used to communicate by drawing pictures, and that's what we started doing again, right? So how do you analyze pictures for content that's actionable, that'll cause an organization to fix something or to keep repeating something that works really well? So that's kind of what Anna does in the background.
Okay. So she pulls reviews from places like Amazon, or like, let's say, for example, with the Orlando Magic, what kind of information would you draw from?
So for the Magic, we do primarily Ticketmaster data, because there's a lot of fan reviews out there. And then a lot of our clients actually collect their own data. So for the Magic, they do a post-game survey, which is a thumbs up, thumbs down. Tell me about your experience. Right? And as humans, how many of you have ever filled out a survey? Actually, you know what? I'll ask a tough question. How many of you have surveys that are conducted after every class you take here? How long are they? How many questions? Sorry? 10, 15 questions, right? And how many of you like filling those things out? You do? So what's interesting about 10, 15, 20, we have clients who have 40 questions on their surveys, right? I mean, these are like police interrogations. For heaven's sakes, you're asking about 30, 40, 50 things. And this is after I came to your restaurant, I ate there, I paid you for the food, and now you're asking me to spend time telling you. A lot of people don't. If something really bad happened or something really good happened, maybe you do. And so we're getting to a world where those interrogations, which are typically closed-ended on a scale of 1 to 10, how clean was the bathroom, was the wait long, was the server friendly, right? I mean, you ask about things that you think matter to you. We flip it around. So what we would have our clients do if we have a restaurant, they'd simply ask a question. You came to my restaurant, tell me about your visit. That's it, right? Nothing else. So what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me what you remembered, what stood out for you. Right? You're going to tell me about what are considered peak moments, either really negative peak moments or really positive peak moments. And I have no idea what peak moments matter to you. So by letting you tell me, I gather that data, and then Anna goes in and tells you, well, when we look at last week, here were the peak moments people were talking about, and these many were negative, these many were positive, and this is how it compares to last year. So you know that idea that if I can read your mind, I know exactly what to do. Well, we're not quite at the mind reading stage yet, but I can ask you what's on your mind. You tell me what's on your mind, and then I can tell you exactly what that pattern is.
Okay, so what are some examples of turning that information into actionable insights? Like for the Orlando Magic, for example, or the Orlando Tourism?
So I'll give you an example in the context of actually the airport. How many of you people have traveled to the airport recently? If you go past security, they have these water fountains that you can take your own bottle and you can fill it, right? It's a bottle filling station. They've had those bottle filling stations for a while. Somebody happened to, on social media a few months ago, put a picture of it, and it went viral. It's like, wow, you can do this at the Orlando airport. It's been viable for well over a year, right? So what they realized was something that they take for granted, travelers actually don't know about. And the biggest thing, particularly if you're traveling with little kids and stuff like that, right? Before security, you're emptying all your bottles out, you're getting rid of the fluids you have. And now it's like, okay, I can get rid of this stuff. I can go behind there, carry my little bottle and fill it up again. So it's things like that. Sometimes we're so embedded in what we do that we forget the little things that matter to people. People remind us of the little things that matter. And so when they tell you, with the Magic, it's been a really interesting kind of client for us, right? So any of you huge basketball fans out here? Magic fans out here? So we've had reasonably okay seasons for many, many years, right? So if your core product is a basketball game and fans are excited if you win and less excited if you don't, What do you do if you have a team that is not generating the kind of excitement fans want on the floor? The answer is you start generating excitement around it, right? So if you go to a restaurant that has a perfect example is Chef Mickey's out at Disney. Any of you been there? It's a great place for little kids. It's a very interactive restaurant. Every hour the characters come out, there's music, you take your napkins and you wave them around. It's an experience. The food qualities, I mean, you could go, to a Golden Corral and get the same quality food for probably a fraction of the price. It's the experience, right? So if you're going to charge somebody $45 for a little kid to have a buffet, and the kid's going to eat $3 worth of food, if all you did was you let them sit there and eat $3 quality of food, parents are not going to keep going. It's the kids. They get to sit up on the chair, they get to wave their napkins, they get to interact with the characters. Now suddenly what's a so-so experience gets amplified into a peak moment is when, Mickey came to my table, I was able to get a picture with him. So that kid wants to go there again for their birthday the following year and pay another $45 for a $3 meal. So that's the idea, right? And for the Magic, it's really interesting. They've spent a lot of time and effort on the show and the entertainment. The reason we know that, so this is what's really cool, right? The Magic do it intuitively. Anna's able to quantify it. So we've got data from 30 different NBA teams. And you think the teams that are winning need to put a great halftime show on? They couldn't care less, right? People are excited you're delivering a winning game. So they don't have those ancillary functions. They don't need them. When we do the analysis, or when Anna does the analysis, she's actually able to come back and say, your fans talk about these things a lot more than other teams' fans. And we think you need to keep that going. And by the way, they talk about this a lot less. And in comparison, this other team has a lot more people talking about it. Maybe you want to go learn something from them. Right? So Anna's kind of doing all of that stuff in the background as well, which helps you drive operationally, what do you do, right? I mean, a game day experience is a lot more than just the game. And so this kind of helps you understand what aspects of it matter, what aspects of it are driving a negative outcome, and how do you fix that?
Okay, so you go through Ticketmaster to collect that
Yeah.
data?
We're partnered with Ticketmaster on that.
Okay. So it's a partnership with Orlando Magic or a partnership with Ticketmaster?
Both.
Or both?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, in fact, the next thing we're going to be doing with Ticketmaster is looking to see across leagues. Here are basketball fan experiences compared to soccer, hockey, and baseball. To see, are there things that people talk about at the other leagues? I mean, we're very unique in that we're always played indoors in a very air-conditioned, climate-controlled facility. Soccer's played, outdoors. I mean, in Orlando, it's fairly warm. How do experiences differ? What do people, why do people want to go out and stand in the sun and sweat for 2-3 hours? So we're going to start looking at fan experiences across to see, are there things the NBA can learn from the NFL or the NHL?
Okay, and I believe you have some information that you're
Yeah.
going to share?
Anybody wants to see magic? Let me show you magic.
Okay.
Are we up on the screen? We're not up on the screen.
We're almost up. Now you're up.
Cool. So magic is when something works and you weren't expecting to. And sometimes when you go to these things and display, particularly with Macs, most of you Mac users or Windows users?
Mac.
Windows? In a lot of display places, Windows machines tend to connect easier. I've had a huge, this USB-C thing, it's beautiful, but then half the times it doesn't connect to projectors and stuff. How many of you here, before I go into this and talk about Anna and kind of all of the funky AI we've got going on behind it, how many of you are familiar with AI, know about AI? How many of you have read a book called Automate This? Go take a pencil out, write on something, take your phone out. It's called Automate This, and I want you guys to go read the book. It's probably about 5-7 years old now. But there's something they talk about in that book which is inherently very human. right? And the very human thing is we believe we're actually smart and we're creative, and machines cannot replicate creativity. Automate This talks about a group of a machine that was trained with inputs being symphonies, recognized the patterns in there, and was able to output a new one. Right? Now, anybody writing a piece of music, writing a piece of drawing, doing a piece of art, writing a novel, we think that's a very creative process because that's what inherently makes us human, right? That's what differentiates us from virtually any other species. And Automate This talks about how a machine generated a symphony, took it to people that were, I'm not a symphony person, I couldn't tell a bad one from a good one, but they took it to people who frequently attend and go to symphonies, and they placed this in front of one group and said, here's a new composer, and they're young, and they're up and coming. We don't want to tell you who they are, but tell me how you feel about this music. And the music was described with very human terms, soul and body and feel and melancholy, or all of those words that we use to describe emotion. The second group was told, a machine generated this symphony. Tell me what you think about it. And the people that were told machine was, it's flat, it's got no soul. They described it like a machine was. Same piece of music, same target audience, right? So the reason I tell you to read the book is you're at a point where in the next 10, 15, 20 years, things are going to be completely different, right? Technology and artificial intelligence and machines are going to do things that we think are inherently human and they shouldn't be able to do. IBM just came out with something I think it was last week. They actually had a machine debate against a human. It was given a topic, it learned everything about the topic, the human went first, 4-minute kind of commentary. The debater took that in, came back, and formulated arguments based on what the human had said, supported by facts that were in its database. Right? I mean, debating is something we consider extremely human. It takes two intelligent people to do it. And a machine, it wasn't great, but it probably did about as well as I would have. So, read Automate This. So here's...
Before you go on to this, that leads me to a question that I had. Regarding students going into marketing careers, what skills should they be developing? Or do you think that as far as analytical skills with data, or is it going to get to a place where we're going to depend on software to do it for us? Like, what should these students be working on?
I think anybody in the data analysis business is a storyteller.
Okay.
And storytelling, I'm on the fence based on what Automate This said, right? And we're actually doing some really interesting work right now with Anna that's looking at how do you tell simple stories from your data. So we're beginning to look at that, but I think storytelling is essentially the skill, right? So if you're a marketing person, what's your primary job? It's to understand what matters to your customers or the consumers out there. If you can figure out what matters and you can figure out how to package unmet needs, you have a product that presumably people will buy if it's at the right price point. Mm-hmm. So I think marketing has become more and more data-oriented, but the shortage of things I see out there in the space are really people don't know how to tell stories. We teach data analytics at UCF, it's taught in the Department of Computer Science and the Department of Statistics. Well, I walk in and you get all of these kids that are really smart and can learn Python and apply R and work with large data sets so they can program the heck out of anything and interpret the heck out of any data set. But I'll give you a simple example, right? So this is what a hardcore data scientist or a machine would tell you right now. I have a rat problem in my house. So what I do is I buy 100 mouse traps. I put pieces of cheese on them and I spread them around the house on the outside and the inside. And I come back a week later and I have 100 dead mice, right? I can throw that into an analytics engine, give it to a data analyst who has no idea what cheese is, what a mousetrap is, what a rat or a mouse is. And you could draw two different conclusions that are both equally valid conclusions from the data perspective, first conclusion you could draw is the mousetrap kills mice. Reasonable conclusion, we all know it's a good conclusion. The second would be cheese kills mice, right? There was cheese, dead mouse, cheese, mouse, dead, related. So you wake up, your analyst, your data scientist, your machine, told you cheese kills mice. So you're all excited now. You go out there, go to Publix, and you buy all the cheese you can possibly lay your hands on. And you're spreading it out all over the place. Well, what do you think is going to happen? And so I think that's where the storytelling and the interpretation of the data with some basis of logic becomes critical. Right?
Okay.
What matters, what doesn't? How do you eliminate what matters? And machines, I don't think, are quite at that point yet. Maybe they will be. At a later point, if IBM's Watson can understand what a mousetrap is and what a cheese is, and know that one is a food item and one is a trap, and find some data to say this particular food item is not toxic, not poisonous, it may be able to. But I think it's that storytelling.
Okay, and then being able to pull those key insights out of the data.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is historically, marketing folks have had to spend 80% of their time trying to find the insights, and then they spend 20% of their time trying to communicate them. Right? With technology, and what I'll show you here is, what this allows you to do is to flip it. Right? Spend 20% of your time finding the insights. It frees up a lot more time now to figure out what to do with the data. What's the action? What am I going to do? Now that I've learned something, what's my next step? So everybody can see this. And you've seen these things, right? These are called word clouds. Ours are a little fancier, and we tell you what percentage of people talked about it, the color coding. This is all generally happy stuff. So this is all Ticketmaster data for 30 NBA teams. But if you look at it, what's a couple of cool things, I'm going to show you just really what Anna does really well. So a word is great, but when they're talking about great, what are they talking about? And hopefully this will be large enough for most of you to read. Can everyone see it, or should I blow it up? Right? So what Anna's been able to do is to tell you the word great when it occurs. In a word cloud, it's nice to know that people refer to it as great, but what are they talking about? So we know they're talking about the great time they had, the great game they saw, the great seat they had, the great experience, right? So Anna's been able to make a connection between a word and how people are describing it. It's what we call a connection. She kind of said, here's a word and it's connected to this word. They're used together to tell me something. Beyond kind of that connection is what else are they talking about that's similar? So I'll show you something really funky here. And this is Anna doing it in the background, never having been taught anything. She can actually do this in 15 different languages right now. Do you see the word great, good, awesome, amazing, nice, and bad? Who here thinks they're not related words? Right? I mean, we know this by the time we come out of elementary school, definitely middle school, that they're describing something and they're very similar words. They're used in similar ways. So what Anna's done is said, not based on being told these are similar words, but just by reading, I can come to the conclusion and say these things are related because they're being used in similar ways, right? If you read a sentence saying the food was great and the service was phenomenal, great and phenomenal, you know, are being used to describe something. They're descriptors about an experience, and you could probably say, you know, I think these two belong together. And so that's what Anna's doing, right? So you kind of look at it, and this is all with a click, multiple languages in seconds. And I think we have 40,000 records, 32,000 records in the data set right now. We do this on millions of records, right? So think about what's going on in the background. If you had to do this manually, you'd put it all in a spreadsheet, you'd start coding it, if you're a marketing person, and you're trying to find patterns, right? What do we as humans like to do? We like to draw graphs. We like to look at numbers. Nobody responds, you know, if I went to Melissa and said, hey, I need $100,000 to spend on marketing because I got this fuzzy feeling that people seem to want blue-colored water. She's going to fire me immediately, right? You don't make a $100,000 investment on a fuzzy feeling. If I walked in and said, 3 times as many people talk about the blue water as they do about the green one, and so I think we should advertise the heck out of the blue one, she'll give me $100,000 because I can show return on investment, right? At the end of the day, whoever you are, whatever job you have, Any idea you have about spending money is going to be driven by you spend it and you'll make more back. And so we like to respond to quantitative stuff. And this is qualitative data. So our whole job, Rana's job, is to quantify certain things. I'll show you something really cool here. We have, we have Orlando Magic data broken out. Let's see. So imagine asking the question, I'm the Orlando Magic. There are 29 other NBA teams. And your CEO shows up and says, tell me what's different about our fan experience. Right? I mean, it's a useful question to ask. It's a tough question to answer because you either have to collect a bunch of data, all closed-ended, about every single team. Well, how are you going to ask the New York Knicks fans as an Orlando Magic CEO for their feedback? Nobody's going to tell you. So let's answer that question. Right? So what we know is here are the things they talk about Orlando Magic. The biggest one, the most important term being great, right? So we know that was true for the entire NBA. I'm now going to let Anna compare it to all of the NBA. So in a couple of clicks, Anna is going to tell you what matters to the Magic fans and what matters to the overall NBA fans. What do you see? You see great, good, seat. Very similar set of words, right? So this kind of tells you, okay, so most of my fans like the same types of things that other fans do. She can tell you virtually instantaneously how the fan experiences are different. Now look at this, right? The word amazing shows up for the Orlando Magic in 15% of fan reviews compared to only, 9% of the rest of the NBA? This is a team that hasn't won for heaven knows how long. I mean, had like a serious, good winning season. But this happens, right? So the Magic has been very, very astute at making sure fan experiences are amazing so people keep buying tickets, buying season passes, visiting again and again. Anna essentially validates this and tells you what seems to matter. We can go through and we know they talk about the food a bit more, but here's what I'm going to do. So now she's going to start grouping stuff together. And it's kind of fascinating as she's doing that. Hopefully we still have a network connection. That as she's doing that, she's going through probably a couple of million kind of hypotheses simultaneously to figure out what are the things that seem to matter. What do I bubble up, right? My job is to make the human that's looking at me only look at relevant stuff. I don't want to show them irrelevant stuff. So here's something that's really cool. We see show and entertainment. Well, show and entertainment are interesting. And here's something Anna's able to do. So we can go through and we can look at show and entertainment. And we can literally read the reviews that talk about fantastic game, shows, food, bathroom. But now here's where Anna's intelligence comes in. We can ask her for insights about this. And she's going to come in and tell me, interestingly, that the 2015-16 season and the 2016-17 season, people talked about the show and entertainment aspect of the game a lot more, right? So from a Magic perspective, you've got to ask yourself, this last season, did we do the same things, right? And from a marketing perspective, it answers a great question, right? If I keep doing something, and the first year people are excited about it, the second year they talk about it, what do you think happens the third year? It becomes an expectation, right? I mean, imagine Full Sail starting in July. Every time you start a class, they give you $1,000 worth of a goodie bag, right? Or they give you a Bitcoin every month. The first month, you're excited as heck. I mean, you're going to go talk about it everywhere, right? The second month, it's like, wow, they're doing this again. The third month, they stop. What do you think is going to happen? People are going to complain because they started expecting it. Right? So it's really fascinating how what is an outlier, what delivers a phenomenal experience, becomes an expectation over time. Right? So from a Magic perspective, Anna's able to tell you, they talked about it a lot, a bit less. The question then becomes, are we doing the same thing? In which case, we've now set an expectation. So if we stop doing it, we're going to get negative comments because people expect it. Or do I keep trying to exceed expectations? Right? Any of you that go work, you probably know this from your consumer product company days, right? What are you always trying to do? You're always trying to meet and exceed expectations because that's what drives loyalty. Well, exceeding expectations is really, really hard because Disney's a perfect example. I mean, you go to Disney and a theme park, they do really, really good, right? Now, if you're a tourist, it's phenomenal. You're excited about it. If you're a person locally with an annual pass to Disney, I mean, it just becomes routine, right? So you know you're going to be getting a great experience. That becomes your expectation. So it's kind of an interesting way to think about consumer expectations and perceptions. But you know, this is kind of the magic that Anna does.
Very cool. Amazing. I think we talked about this a little bit before. I teach entrepreneurship, and students look through, in my class during the third week, through customer reviews, looking to find some insights as to how to improve the organization they're researching for the month. And it is tedious, I do hear.
It's painful.
Yeah. So depending on the size of the organization they're looking at, it's challenging to find trends, but I just tell them to do their best. And I think it's more of the exercise of going through it and trying to find those trends. But for example, like with Orlando City Soccer, when they first opened up, there was lots of complaints about parking and also which entrance to go through. So they were able to, find trends through the reviews to see, oh, okay, well, we need to improve our communication about where to park, or we need to potentially color code the entrances on the tickets to find that linkage. So that comes to your point with the storytelling. It's like, okay, you have this information. Now, what actionable actions are you going to take from a marketing or PR perspective to capitalize on these?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the power of the open text content is it will tell you about stuff that really matters, not stuff that you think matters, right? So by reading the actual voice of the customer, it's just one short step from me having an interaction or conversation with every customer. And then turning that into, it's really kind of strange. We've seen this across industries. The things that you think matter very often don't matter. And the things that matter are, you'd never even think about them because we as consumers are really odd, right? Amazon, a perfect example is some of the products you buy on Amazon now are kind of what they call easy packaging, right? It's easy to open and start using it. Apple had this down pat a long time ago. If you bought, and this is, predates laptops and stuff, right? If you bought a Mac or an Apple desktop machine, the box was easy to open. You put the thing out. There was one wire to plug in. It was a power, and you hooked it up, and everything else was color-coded. And you looked at Windows and the number of things you had to do. I mean, it was just funky. And the idea that I should make something easy to box and start using, it's not a novel idea, but I think Apple's notorious for this, right? I mean, they're so customer-centric. They spend a lot of time and effort trying to understand how to make life a little bit easier. I think Windows is a good product, but a Windows machine just is not as easy an experience to unbox and start using as an Apple machine is. So it's kind of fascinating about the things that matter to us and discovering those.
Right. And that's also the point of the exercise is a lot of and I think a lot of people just going into business in general, they think they know, what the customer wants. And a lot of times the customer's telling you what they want. and we just need to listen, right?
Yeah, and yet it's true across everything, right? Now, business to consumers, that's absolutely true. But even in our case, we have we have a really cool technology. We used to talk about technology, and it's exciting, right? If you talk to companies about AI and machine learning and natural language processing and all of these things, they get excited about your solution. But we quickly realized after that first 5 minutes of excitement, they're wanting to solve a problem. And early on, in the case of Datanautix, we probably spent half our development effort building bogus things that we thought were exciting. And clients would look at it and say, yeah, that's really exciting, but, right? And it's the buts that tell you the thing that they need is so simple that we as developers or as engineers would never even think of it because it's so basic, right? It's not exciting to build. But that's the stuff that people want. And I think figuring out very quickly that you really know nothing, and it's the consumer, the customer, that if they have the ability to tell you, will tell you the right things to drive you in the right direction. Red Lobster is a client of ours, and we spend every week, one of our analysts is meeting with them to look at what types of stories, this is for the marketing group, what types of stories they're creating for their executives and how those stories are being communicated. So we understand how they tell stories so that we can develop stuff that makes the storytelling easier for them. And it's a tough problem. I mean, any of you that go work in consumer-facing industries, the hardest thing to do is to figure out what matters to customers in a way that gives you an advantage. Otherwise, everybody's pretty generic.
I just have one question for our PR students out there before we open up questions to the audience. Prior to looking at reviews for business opportunities like you have developed here, was looking at reviews considered a PR reputation management problem and not an area of business opportunity? And is that still happening? Are there silos between PR departments and marketing departments and branding as far as connecting those opportunities?
There are, because I think very often organizations are reactive, and marketing tends to be more of a proactive function. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a PR nightmare on your hand, you're now trying to figure out how people are going to respond to it, what you want to say in return. Whereas the idea that this is a source of business insight that has longer term impact, that's becoming more relevant now. But the capabilities to do the analysis around answering that question are still not quite there in most organizations, right? I mean, that's the type of stuff we do, but for the most part, you could get your entire Google reviews feed, and you can actually buy it from Google. And you're a restaurant with, a couple of hundred locations. Chances are you get many of these on a daily, weekly, a ton of them on a monthly basis. And people print them, right? And they'll read the first page, they'll scan the second, they'll kind of sporadically look at the third, and then pages 4 through 100, nobody reads. So people actually make decisions, particularly executives, on very sparse data. The other thing I've seen, and through my career, things happen. Somebody who's the CEO's neighbor says, "I went to your store, and I had this horrible experience." And the CEO picks up the phone and yells at somebody and says, "How did that happen?" And the entire organization goes off and tries to fix that problem without really understanding: is this a consistent problem? Is this a sizable problem? Is it a relevant problem to work on, or is there something more important? Technology like this, combined with the fact that you now have hundreds, thousands, millions of customer voices telling you, enables you to ask that second question: is before I go work on that, let me make sure it's more than just my neighbor that has the issue. So I think PR tends to respond to that 1, 2, 3 blurbs. Marketing has to take a deeper look at patterns across many to find the ones that are relevant, which is why I think they're still in kind of silos.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering that. I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Do we have a microphone?
Windows machine guy, you're not going to ask a question? You said you like Windows, right? You were the Windows guy?
We have a microphone coming over your way, okay?
You said, Anna, its job is to sort through comments and categorize them. Does it also have the ability to identify troll comments and put them in a category? Or is it kind of harder for it to do that?
It has has the ability to kind of find patterns over time and uncover interesting patterns. So if you had a bunch of trolls that were making very specific points about a certain issue to try to get it bubbled up to the top, then the pattern would say there's an unusual spike in this type of conversation. We're looking at trying to figure out ways in which we can determine if something was written by a bot or not. And I'll tell you the way we're doing it. It's kind of interesting. We're actually writing a bot to write comments, right? So if I've got 1 million comments about you, can I find patterns in there, and can I actually create a bot that will generate new comments that look reasonably decent, right? Because if we can generate reasonably decent comments, feed them back into our engine to say, so let's say at the front end you've got a piece of code that is basically going to say this is human generated or bot generated. We would generate our own bot related comments to train our differentiation engine. You then ask the next level, which is maybe it's not a bot generated thing, but maybe it's some sort of a troll who's driving up a lot more volume. People have certain speaking styles or writing styles. And so the idea that you can classify or group things based on not the content of the content of the comment, but the structure of the comment, right? So we're beginning to look at those things.
Good. You have a question over here.
My question is, you mentioned Orlando Magics and how you guys look at Ticketmaster and read those analysis. From that, does she read like how some generations and cultures in different areas, they speak in slang or different terminology, but still represent those good and positive reviews? Can it understand and interpret that information still, going into a younger generation more than a properly corrected typer, I would say?
Yeah, so this was a while ago. I'm doing this from memory, but I remember the word fat was not fat, right? It was PHAT, and it had a certain meaning. Words like that would get picked up if there were enough volume in the data set, right? So what's really interesting about Anna, she has no idea about the English language or any other language. She's just looking at words and relationships between words, right? So she's diagramming sentences out. And if let's say the comment is that's a fat outfit, she'd know outfit is a subject, fat is a modifier for the subject, right? And she'd be able to associate fat with that subject. Now, if the word fat was being used to describe a bunch of different objects, should be able to recognize that, hey, this is a word that's being used to describe a bunch of stuff, and here are the things it's describing. So yeah, from that perspective, it's a self-learning system, right? It's got the intelligence to interpret and read, and then we don't tell it anything about content. If it starts showing up, it shows up.
Okay. Okay. Oh, no, you. Well, sure. One last question. So now, within this, our job now, seeing that a lot of that information is being done AI-wise, is to be able to interpret that information, because I feel like she was mentioning earlier, would that affect careers in the future, seeing that we're going into more AI processing?
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
You, as the creator of the AI itself, have a designated job, but us going into the field of marketing and advertisement and seeing a lot of the data information are done AI, now, I would say, or going to in the future, because they're going to start learning and self-programming itself, would that hinder our future jobs, like in career fields, if that makes sense?
Not really. I'll tell you why. It's kind of a generational thing, right? The younger you are, the more plastic you are. The older you get, the more stiff you become, because you've seen things work a certain way, and you go down a certain path, and kind of that common knowledge drives you in a certain way. For me to sell Anna as a substitute for a consumer insights approach to somebody who's been a market researcher for 30 years is a lot harder than for me to sell it to you. Right? Because you're clueless. You're coming out of school, you've never seen real life. And so the advantage is very often the younger you are, the more malleable and the more adaptive you are. So you're willing to try new stuff, right? And therefore you become the person that is incorporating these new technologies, in which case I think it just creates a huge opportunity rather than a gap. Yeah, I don't think jobs ever go away with AI. And we had that during the Industrial Revolution, where people said you automate stuff and people are going to lose jobs. I think we all just move to higher level stuff. And careers change, and skills need to change. And if you've got the ability to keep relearning, it'll be different. But you guys are now in a generation where absolutely 80% of what you're learning in school right now, you will not be using in 10 years. It's just the way things are, things are rapidly changing and moving. But having the ability to learn and adapt is kind of the key skill. So anything you do out there, don't be afraid of AI. There are a lot of people out there who'll talk about the doom and gloom of AI and stuff. AI, where it's pure intelligence and it's thinking, is a long way away, right? We call Anna intelligent. All Anna is she's a machine set of code of things that your brains are doing and you're coded to do anyway. We taught you this stuff in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. That's all Anna's doing, right? So you can look at Anna as your competition, or you can look at any of 10th, 11th, 12th grader as a competition. They're not competition.
One of our music business students, Q Jones, would like to know what your take is on the music industry, and where do you see the marketing of music and merchandise going within the next 3 to 5 years?
I have no clue. What I will tell you is historically, right? So me 30 years ago, I'd go in and CDs had just come out. You guys probably have no clue what CDs are anymore. But you'd buy one, and chances are, I'll even go further back, LPs and EPs, right? I mean, these were the records that spun around, and EP was a very kind of had one song on one side, one on the other. The top side was usually a hit song, and the other side they sold you something that really wasn't that good. An LP typically had 8, 9 songs. Maybe one was really good, maybe another one was okay, and the others were so-so. So 30, 40 years ago, you came out with an album, and you were lucky if you had one great hit on it. I mean, it was outstanding if you had 2. You look at music today, an album has many more hits on it and many more popular songs than it used to. And you've got to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because artists are becoming better? That's absolutely not the case, right? What is happening is Shazam. How many of you are familiar with Shazam, right? What did Shazam do? Shazam was the first step at recognizing patterns in music. Now, you gave it a small clip, and it went out and it said, oh, this clip belongs to this song, and so it could do identification of songs. Now you take those patterns, right, and overlay on top of it all of the different patterns of music you have in a piece of music, and there's only so many. It's a finite set, right? Think about the English alphabet. I mean, we've only got 26 letters, and you can create a bunch of different books and documents, and so think about the building blocks of music. Now, if you take an AI engine, and this is why you need to automate this, right? You take those underlying beats and you associate them with success and failure, you can now figure out which beats are more likely to be associated with success and which ones are more likely to be associated with failure. And now what does Shazam do? Shazam goes the next step and says, give me a piece of music and I'll actually tell you I mean, not Shazam, but generally like the algorithm, right? And I'll tell you if it's going to be successful or not. So you get to pre-test your music without having to go through, write it, compose the music for it, create the song, distribute it out. You get to throw it into this engine, it'll come back and say, there's a 20% likelihood this thing's going to succeed. And so what do? You move on to the next piece of music you're writing. And so I think that has changed the way music works, the music industry works. Good.
Hi. Just out of curiosity, did you yourself create the software behind Anna?
No, I'm not smart enough to do that. I have a group of developers.
Okay.
I'll tell you the story. It's actually interesting how you end up where you do, right? I started my consulting business about 15 years ago, and we used to consult to organizations that the trigger event was my customers are unhappy. Help me figure out why. And we'd charge an arm and a leg for it, and we'd do a 90-day project, and we'd do a deep readout. And my son was studying artificial intelligence and machine learning, and he was looking over my shoulder trying to figure out how I was paying for him to go to college. And he came and he said, he was a sophomore then, he's like, I can automate this. I'm like, no, you can't. So he spent a couple of years of his junior and senior year just kind of playing around with what we had, which was high volumes of human classified data, right? Humans had read these comments and created their categorization around it. And he used it to train the early version of Anna. When he graduated a couple of years ago, we figured out, this had some legs to it. So we stopped our consulting. We put all of our resources towards developing Anna. And that's how it's worked out. So I never thought it was possible. I'm still amazed at what she can do.
Hello. So you have an impressive resume. I want to say that first. You went to
Thank
Yale
you.
and Ohio State, right?
Yep.
Okay. Speaking on career change, I heard you say that a few minutes ago. This wasn't your idea coming out of college? This wasn't your plan, or did it? You said it just developed about 15 years ago?
So I'll tell you my life story. I went into college wanting to go to med school.
Okay.
And had to work. I grew up in Kenya, so I came to the US to go to college. The only job I could find on campus was literally washing dishes in the college cafeteria, 4 o'clock in the morning, right? And as I was doing that for $3.25 an hour, there were people working in the computer center, students who had a job there, who were what they were called computer consultants, but they essentially stood there and took printouts from printers and helped you with your programming stuff. And so I was like, you know what, that at $3.25 sitting in an air-conditioned building is a lot better than washing pots and pans 4 o'clock in the morning. So I took a couple of computer science courses. And that turned into a double major where by the time I was a senior, I quickly figured out I didn't want to go to med school. I wanted to go down the path of computer science. That's when AI, this was in the late 80s, AI was just beginning to happen, early stages. And the first place AI was being applied was auto mechanics and healthcare. If you think about anyone that repairs cars, any of you that are car fanatics here, you know what I'm talking about, right? When your car is not working properly, you're going mentally through a diagnostics. Is it pinging? Is it not starting? I wonder if it's a battery. I mean, we go down a path of diagnostics, and doctors do the same thing. When you think about it, computers can be programmed very easily to do that kind of stuff, right? So I studied AI, was working on my PhD and stuff, and then went out and worked in the real world and hated it. So I'm one of those guys that made a career change, went back to business school, and did all of my consumer behavior stuff as part of my MBA. And since then, it was, I worked for large corporations. I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And so this is just kind of a natural process. Where we've ended up is not by design. I never wanted to develop an AI engine. It's just I only work on things that are fun for me because there's enough, life stuff enough without enjoying what you do. And so that's kind of brought me to where I am.
One more, and I'm gonna leave you alone.
Sure.
On being an entrepreneur, this is loud. On being an entrepreneur, what are the hardest things, the most, I guess, challenging things of being an entrepreneur?
Faith. You really, really got to believe in yourself. And when I say faith, it's amazing how many tough times you go through and how many times you want to throw in the towel. And it's taken me one very successful startup, one failed startup, to this third one now, where this is the first time, and it's been, like I said, 14 years in the making in terms of how we've pivoted and evolved and transformed and changed direction. But I know absolutely for a fact what we work on is really cool. There's a market need out there for it, and we're going to succeed, right? Regardless of where the revenues drop this month or next month they go up, I now believe it's going to succeed, right? So whenever we hit a roadblock, something happens, we're able to dust it off very easily. And that's just something that comes with experience.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Marquise Wilkins. I'm from Jersey City, New Jersey. And just hearing you talk and stuff, you admire me of the founder of 5 Hour Energy Shots. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
Well,
I know of him.
Food for thought or whatever. He creates prototypes in a hangar, and he's a billionaire. He's from India, and he pays scientists from around the world to create inventions like robots and artificial intelligence, like you're saying right now. And one thing I'm trying to understand is this a physical thing, or is this like an actual robot, or this is like a software?
It's all software.
Oh, it's all software? Are you trying to make this like an actual, like, moving thing, or?
No, because she doesn't need to move, right? She's an analyst. She's analyzing data. The thing we are working on, and I may even have a video of this somewhere. If I find it, I'll forward it on to Melissa. But I had an opportunity to see the CEO of a hospital.
Yes.
And watch her for a day, right? So the first thing she does, healthcare is kind of quirky. Medicare is 80% of your revenues as a hospital, and you get paid based on patient satisfaction scores. So the first thing she does is she comes into the office and she has 2 people she calls. There's the inpatient patient satisfaction person, and there's the outpatient one. And she asks them, what were our patient satisfaction scores yesterday? That's it. And if they've dropped, she asks them why. Now imagine if she could walk into her office, have an Alexa there, and literally be able to ask Alexa, tell me what happened yesterday. And Alexa would come back and say, patient satisfaction scores dropped yesterday. And the primary reason was the ER. And we had twice as many people complaining about the long wait in the ER, right? So it will manifest itself in some physical ways, but it's not going to be a talking, moving, not a moving device.
And one more question. I would love like some type of like great words of advice or encouragement for me to persevere to the next step.
What do you want to do?
I'm trying to be a film director, documentary style. So I've faced failure in my life plenty of times. I used to be a military veteran. I've been to both wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. I've dealt with robots. I've hit rock bottom. I basically know what failure is at this point, but what would be?
So, and if I tell you something, what are you going to do with it?
I'm going to work hard. I'm going to take that, and just like everything I took to bring me here today.
So here's what I'll tell you. Don't ask for that kind of advice too often. Because most people will tell you, we've had a number of people tell us about Anna. This is not going to work. Humans are never going to replace, machines are never going to replace humans. I don't think you can analyze data where I know my clients or my customers. And what I will tell you is 99% of the people out there will tell you whatever you're working on, whatever harebrained idea you've got is harebrained. And after a while, you start believing it. Right? So the goal should be ask and ignore as much of it as you want to. And, people will tell you things like conventional wisdom. I've tried that. I've seen it happen there. They'll give you every reason for it not to work. And I think what you've got to do is if you really believe in your idea, it will work. It may be a hard process. It may take money. It may mean living on bread and water for several years, but it will work. And so I think that's the only thing, is just ignore what most people tell you.
Thank you.
And there'll be a lot of unasked advice you'll get.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that
sir.
you definitely ignore.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your service. Do we have any other questions?
We do have 2 quick questions online for you. Q again would like to know if Anna is available to the public, and if so, what's her price range?
She's not available to the public. I'll talk to Melissa to see if we can make her available to a class of students.
That would be great.
It's not a few $100s piece of software. She's fairly expensive. She's well worth what you pay for her, but she's expensive.
And along with that, Sherry is in our graphic design program, and she would like to know, does Anna also analyze the paid surveys that you take? Like, you know how companies have, you take the survey, you get paid, or you get so much % off this company. Does she analyze those as well?
So think of Anna as anything open-ended that you feed her, she'll analyze, right? So we either find stuff in the public domain, and she can analyze that, or you can seed her with data that you've collected on your own. So absolutely. I'm actually going to show you guys a picture of Anna if I can find one. Sorry?
While he's looking that up, do we have any other questions?
I'm good online.
I'm sorry? You're good? Okay.
Over here?
Yeah. Oh,
There's Anna. And she disappeared.
Sanjay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one question.
Okay.
So the process that Anna does, the text categorization, does it do using n-grams? I mean, I'm just asking out of curiosity here. In the text analytics sphere.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is kind of the classic marketing business front-end face, which says, I have no clue.
Okay.
I call it magic because we have a bunch of developers, but it's a lot of, if you're a technical guy, it's a combination of, it's kind of parsing the sentence itself and using parse trees,
Yeah.
and then finding the relationships as a function of kind of part of speech tagging and all of those things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Hey, Melissa, in the, right here. Hey,
Hey, George.
quick question. What are businesses doing with this information? For example, a person runs a resort and they see on social media or they read a bad review, this was the worst experience of my life and they didn't make up the room or whatever the case may be. Are they being proactive and using this data to retain customers from the people you're working with?
Oh, absolutely. Right, the whole goal is, if there's broken stuff, can I learn about it faster, in which case I can fix it. More importantly, we have a client who has, it's one of the local resorts. And what we did for them was a comparison of online reviews about them and their key competitors that they identified. With this particular site, our client has a phenomenal lazy river. They know it's phenomenal, but they had no idea that 60% of online reviews, the thing they talk about the most is actually the lazy river. Right? So it gave them a sense of what should my banner ad look like. Well, if 6 out of 10 people are coming to my facility and talking about my lazy river, 6 out of 10 times my banner ad probably needs to show that, right? Because if you think about this from a marketing perspective, what's the purpose of marketing in the consumer space particularly? It's to get people to understand who you are so that they choose to come and try you, right? And if they come and try you, if the delivered experience is different than the expected experience, you have a gap. The wider that gap, particularly in a negative way, the less likely they're going to come back again. So it's that simple, right? So how do you set up expectations that you know will turn into actual experiences when people show up? And so I think there's a lot of kind of use from a marketing perspective that way.
Great.
Hi. Over there, over here. The other side. Yeah. Hi, how are you? I have a question. Is that in my country, the people who do these survey things doesn't take it so seriously? Not me, obviously, but they don't do like the comments so serious. So does Anna like takes all the information seriously, or is has like something like, for example, if someone writes "it was great," and that's it, Anna does it take serious the thing?
She can be trained to, and she does this to some extent, right? If you think about a short comment versus a long comment, if I took the time to tell you and I spent a lot of effort writing that comment out, clearly that's something that's really important to me, right? So she's got that ability to kind of weave it in and interpret in some way. It was great is an example, right? I mean, so the only thing I get out of it is great. I have no idea what it was. So Anna will probably kind of ignore that a little bit to say, well, it was great, but I don't know if it was a lazy river, the food, the hotel. So she'll ignore those kinds of things because she can't associate it with anything.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey.
So I was wondering, does Anna is able to work with artists, like musical artists, for example? Let's say an artist such as like Justin Bieber, who receives tweets like probably 100 per second. And does Anna is able to work, reading those tweets and seeing what their fans are talking about or what they are interested in, or even YouTube comments? Is that something Anna can do, or you guys are looking to work with artists? Because I think it would be a very valuable tool for artists to know what fans are thinking of and what they're talking about.
She can, because she can consume any sort of open-ended content and find patterns in it, right? The problem, I think, is over-interpreting stuff. And what you tend to find with Twitter and things like these, and there are platforms out there that will find you the keywords in tweets and do that in much more real time, right? Anna is much more of your cerebral analyst. She's actually thinking about stuff, trying to find relationships between words. It's not just word spotting. And maybe it's a generational thing. I think Twitter and these types of things are really kind of fickle ways for people to talk about stuff, right? They just kind of burst in the moment I'm saying something, but I have no other context around what was happening when you said that, because it's very short and bursty, right? You've gone to a basketball game, you've bought a ticket from Ticketmaster, now you're leaving a review about the game. There's a lot more contextual information that I can use to interpret what you said. And so I think so I call Twitter fickle in that way, in that the content itself doesn't tell you about the environment and what else was going on at that time. So the interpretation becomes a lot harder, and therefore could potentially drive you in the wrong direction.
But you could look at album reviews, right?
Absolutely. Album reviews and stuff like that. You put a new song out there, new artist that's showing up. I mean, if I'm Justin Bieber, I'd love to read reviews that say that song sounds just like Justin Bieber's, or he sang just like Justin Bieber, right? Because at the end of the day, if somebody's like me and then they transform a little bit and become a bit better than me, what do? Anybody watches America's Got Talent? I do. And last night they had this woman, she was a phenomenal voice. You close your eyes, you'd think she was Whitney Houston. Well, who the heck wants to listen to another Whitney Houston, right? I mean, Whitney Houston was one of a kind. We're done with her. You don't replicate. No, seriously, in music and stuff, you don't replicate, right? Then you're not going to be a star that way. Nobody knows you as, hey, she's just like Whitney Houston. Well, who is she? I don't know. So they told her that problem is you sound exactly like Whitney Houston. That's not going to separate you out, right? So if I'm an artist, I'm trying to figure out who's trying to break out and who's trying to follow my path and then maybe do sideswipe on me. That kind of stuff we would do, absolutely. Yeah, I just find Twitter to be very, very short burst off the top of my head, and I never think about what I just said again, usually.
Great. Do we have any other questions? These are all really great questions. Thank you so much.
So how many of you here want to be entrepreneurs? Good.
Is that about 40%?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sanjay.
This
We
was
really
great.
appreciate you coming to Full Sail and sharing your knowledge.
Well, I'm glad I got a chance to talk about
It's
Anna,
been
and
really
go out there and build your own
fascinating.
Annas, whether it's for music or. I'll talk about one more thing quickly before I forget, and I'll find a link to this if I can. There are AI engines out there that will take an open piece of text, show me a picture of a bird with blue feathers in a forest, and it will actually generate an image and construct an image. Right? So think about that. If you're now trying to get AI to do intelligent stuff, these things are in research labs in universities and places that I think in another 10 or 15 years, you've got a great piece of music and you want a video or an album cover to go with it. A machine may be able to generate that at a relatively low cost. So for those of you that are looking to compose your own music and get an album out there, you could get professional help for a lot cheaper than humans.
Interesting. Well, I'll share that on Connect,
Yeah.
which is our internal site here. So let's give a thank you to Sanjay. All right.